Beautiful, Chase. What a beautiful voice. Lovely, lovely, lovely. So I heard on the way here this morning on the radio that it's supposed to get to up to 86 this week. Yeah. Yeah, isn't that something? I'm wondering if it's summer that hot, maybe all of the pollen that's making me sneeze constantly will be burnt up. We can always hope. So today we're talking about mother. And, you know, as a mother, I don't know, if you're a parent, I think you know this, mother or father, that children tend to push us to the very outer limits of our ability to actually stay in body. I remember, I should say this. I've told this story about my son before, and he doesn't mind. But when he was 2 to 3 years old, you have never seen a human being that could throw a tantrum like this child. I mean, he would lay on the floor, kick and scream, punch anything he could. He would do he would just go wild. And I thought, wow, this personality is too big for me. So I said, I need to make sure you're okay, and I need to make sure you're not in pain when you decide you need to express so loudly and persistently. And I said, what I'd like you to do is, if you need to have a tantrum, if you need to let all that energy out, that's fine, you can do that. But if it's because you're hurting or you're sick or something like that, something, you fell down and you broke a bone or something and I haven't found it yet, would you please just point where it hurts? He said, okay, I'll try, Mom, but it's usually not a physical, it's not really hurting. It's mad. I'm so mad. So then I said, okay, well, you're mad. That's cool. Well, let's work with that. So when you get really mad, you get scary mad. And so it makes me feel nervous and upset too. So would you mind, when you need to express that kind of anger, that you'd go in the bathroom, shut the door, and then you can scream and yell all you want, because I'll be in the other room. It won't bother me nearly as much. And so he said, okay, I could do that. I don't want to hurt you. I don't want to bother you. I could do that. So now this is the time his dad and his sister and I had moved to 14 acres, and we were building a passively solar heated house. And we were living in about 18-foot travel trailer, the four of us. And we were building during the day, and a lot of things were going on. And we were having contractors and people out all the time giving us bids and things like that, normal things you do if you're building a house. And we were talking to some contractor, I don't know which one it was, cement contractor or something, and Jeremy runs up to me and he starts going, do you know what? You're my sister. And he's right about to just lose it, throw himself down on the ground, And I said, I know, you're mad. Go to the outhouse and scream all you want. Go ahead, just be quiet on your way there so I won't get upset. The kid walks to the outhouse, shuts the door, and screams his bloody head off. And this cement contractor looked at me and said, I just don't get that. How did you get him to be willing to do that? I said, well, he really doesn't want to cause trouble. He just wants to express. And so, he's willing to express in the outhouse for me. I started, he was unique. He was like that. He was like, okay, when I did something, he told me he couldn't do something he wanted to do, or had to share, or whatever. You tell your kids they don't want to do. He would really. He came in with the idea that he was in charge. I'm not kidding. He thought he was in charge of the world, probably the universe. People would come and he'd go, Transformer, He was really quite dramatic. I can't blame him, though, because my whole family's dramatic, so it's all right. I mean, it was a thing. I was listening to all of you talking, and everybody was so excited, and I was thinking, they're just like my family. When everybody's talking, they just talk louder and louder and louder because they can't hear each other. And that's just like my family. Sometimes I think, I can't hear any of you. Anyway. So being a mother is really a difficult thing. And so I at that time, had these two little kids, and I was reading a lot about parenting and stuff, and they said, if you are really upset by your kids, it's better for you to go into a closet, shut the door, and scream your head off to release all that energy before you go and deal with whatever your child has done. And so I went in the closet quite a few times, but I had a very bright daughter, okay? And my daughter, when how kids, when the younger next one comes, the nose gets out of joint, and it's like they want the attention, moms know that, the second one comes along, the first one. And so Erin, she never says anything. But whenever I would get on the phone, she would run into the living room, turn on the TV, crank the volume full blast, and then run into the kitchen, drag a chair to the sink, turn on the faucets full blast. And if that didn't get me off the phone, I had one of those refrigerators with a pedal and the freezer door was on the bottom. She'd open that thing up and start flinging chicken everywhere, I'm telling you. I mean, parenthood is not easy. If anybody tells you, it was just a piece of cake, they have a faulty memory. One time I got pulled over because the policeman thought I was driving under the influence. And as soon as he walked up to the car, even when he got by the trunk, he says, I knew what was wrong. You weren't drinking. Maybe you would feel like you wanted to drink, but you weren't drinking, because my two kids were going at it so loud that it was louder than those cars with the boom boxes, I mean, they are screaming at each other's throats. And the policeman comes up, and I roll down the window, and I said, yes. And they just continue. They don't even get the guy's in uniform. He's got a gun. Come on, kids. And I roll down the window, and the man says, you poor lady. I thought you were drunk. You're just sad. It's not easy. It's rewarding, though. And one thing I want to tell you about my experience as motherhood, and I think most mothers feel this too at some point, that they had no idea they could love as much. Not until that baby's put in your arms do you have any idea how much you can love another human being. And it also showed me how much you'd sacrifice for another human being. All night long, walking them when they had colic, and putting him in timeout. One of the things I thought when we were living in the city, Jeremy was about 4 now, that I could send him to timeout and he could start to learn how to be a human training. And so I would set him in the bathroom because we really didn't have a lot of small enclosed spaces. He had a lot of spaces, he could do a lot of damage. So I set him in the bathroom and I thought, okay, that's safe. Everything's nailed down, it's all screwed in, all that. And I would go back, I wasn't like big timeouts, 3 minutes, 3 minutes. In 3 minutes, he could unroll an entire roll of toilet paper in the bathtub like this. Unroll the whole roll. Anyway, creative kid. I wanted to tell you about the warrior mothers that I read about this week. I didn't read too much, but this is the condensed version. War, violence, persecution has forced millions of families from their homes. A lot of them from Somalia. A lot of them from Syria. A lot of them from other places we don't even talk about because there's so many places like this going on. There's a mother whose name was Ahud, who fled Syria in 2013. It was the only way to keep her children safe from the war. She walked with her children for 6 days across the desert to get to a refugee camp where there was not enough food and not enough water and not enough shelter. But they were alive. There's mothers like Christine, whose youngest child was born a refugee in Uganda last month. She braved a multi-day trek through the bush with her family to escape violence of South Sudan. There's single mothers like Ada, who made the dangerous journey from Honduras to Mexico with a 3-year-old son after facing threats from local gangs. These 3 women are mothers who will do whatever it takes to keep their children safe and fed and alive. How lucky are we? How blessed are we to live here, to be in this place, in this beautiful place. Me thinking my motherhood days were hard is a joke. It is a joke. There's so many mothers today that are crying for the loss of their children, their husbands, their parents in these places. I think it should be a lesson to us that moms are one of the most powerful forces on the planet. They persist. They continue to love. They continue to move towards the goal. When Vietnam went on and on and on and on, and for several years, I was part of the group that was always protesting the war. But it wasn't until the Mothers' March on Washington. Do you remember that? 100,000 mothers showed up in Washington, D.C. to protest that their sons were going to Vietnam to be killed. And they were tired of it. They didn't want it anymore. They did not want their children in harm's way. That protest of those 100,000 mothers is what changed the policy in Vietnam, and the withdrawal of our troops started after that. If you don't think that mothers are powerful, think again. Think again. I wanted to talk to you about this workshop I went to because it reminds me on Mother's Day, so it always reminds me of this. There's an anthropologist, he wrote a book called The Third Era, and has anybody read it, The Third Era? It's a wonderful book, and he's an anthropologist, and he has gone to the study how cultures worked in the very first beginning, as we first became human, when we were in that Neanderthal to human stage, how the tribes worked, how the people worked. And he said in the earliest of early cave drawings and things that they found, they've pieced together a culture where women were in charge. In the first 10,000 years since humans were created, women were the gods, goddesses. Because they believed that because women could birth children, they had a magical ability that men didn't have. And so, since they were creating new life, what did somebody say? Growing a little human inside, they got status for that, If you only knew how easy it was, huh? Anyway, so the women, as they got older, became wise women, and they would gather together for so many days a month, and they would listen to their intuition, and they'd pray, and they'd meditate together. And then they would come forth, and they would give their highest wisdom to the tribe. And then the tribe would take that wisdom with respect because they knew they were wise women, and they would discuss it and think about it and decide if they agreed or if they had a better idea or whatever. And then they'd come back together in circle, and they would all share what came out of that. It was a very egalitarian society. Everyone's voice was honored. When it came to a place where a tribe was being aggressive towards another tribe, and maybe they should go to some kind of war between the tribes, the mothers would meditate and pray. And then they would come forth, and they might think in this instance they should go to war to make sure that this other tribe doesn't overrun them. Or they may say not to go to war. And the whole tribe together, there would be a lot of people that would want to go to war and people that wouldn't want to go to war. And so in this culture, everybody made that choice for themselves. The wise women could suggest it. The wise women could say, this is our highest wisdom at this time. But if you didn't want to fight, you didn't have to go to war. And you would not be looked down on. You would not be made less of. How many people saw Hacksaw Ridge? Few of you, yeah. An amazing story of a conscientious objector that went to war as a medic but wouldn't carry a gun. Saved 75 men, carried them out of battle, and was divinely protected in doing it. He was beat up, he was ridiculed, he was made fun of. But he made a choice and he stuck by it. So that's the first era, that egalitarian era where women, and that actually in this country, the native people in this country, before the Europeans showed up, were that way. The women, the wise women ran the tribes, made the deals, did all the negotiation for the tribe. And then the Europeans came. Well, the Europeans were in the second era. And the second era is when they figured out that women didn't do this whole birth thing completely by themselves. They needed a little help. And when they figured that out, they decided that women weren't next to God, weren't godly. They were just vessels. They planted the seed, and then the seed would grow, and the woman was like the garden. We were the dirt. And over that next 10,000 years of human evolution, it became a patriarchy. When it became a patriarchy, we got hierarchy. Hierarchy was invented in the second 10,000 years. And guess who was at the bottom of the hierarchy? Women. And And that was because they had felt like they had these magical powers, right, women, and then all of a sudden they found out that's not true. Oh, my goodness, they're not mystical, magical creatures. Oh my goodness. You know, it's sort of like when people are really sold on a certain presidential candidate, and then the presidential candidate, present company accepted, we're not talking about anybody in particular, but that presidential candidate gets into office and he doesn't really know what he's doing. And so he's learning on the job. And so things are happening that weren't what he said would happen in his campaign. You know, I remember when Nixon got impeached. The people that were the most ardent supporters of Nixon, the ones that stood by him to the very end, where they kept saying, he's innocent, he's innocent, he's innocent, until the facts came out and it was proved that he orchestrated the break-in of the Watergate and the whole criminal things that he did. It was those people that had voted for Nixon, had been behind him, had put him up on a pedestal, that had the worst to say about him. They wanted to, slice him up, tar and feather him, and drag him through the streets. There was no forgiveness because they had put all their faith and belief in this person, and he disappointed them. I feel like the second era is kind of like that, Men kind of went, wow, you guys are so wise. Let's just, do what you think is best, right? And I think what happened was when they found out, hey, this kid's grown up and he looks just like me, doesn't look like you, must be my kid, my kid. And it changed there legally. Before, the lineage was all traced through the mother. Now, the lineage is traced through the father. The mother changes her name to the father's name and loses her identity. So, what I'm saying is that I understand the evolution of moving from the planet of Venus and the planet of Mars. You remember, the Mars versus Venus? Women are from Mars, men are from Venus. No, women are from Venus, men are from Mars. And it's true, because when you think about it, you think about that first era, and they sat around. I kind of feel like it was sort of like the 60s. This is my idea of the first era. It was sort of like the 60s. We all get in a circle, and everybody gets to say whatever they think, and it's all good, and you can't criticize anybody's opinion because it's their opinion, and and you can never agree to move forward to get much done because there's so many opinions. And there's no dishing anybody because they have a crazy opinion. So it becomes like a big sit-in, and we're all very happy together talking about stuff but never doing anything. And then the men come in and create hierarchy. Hierarchy is a very effective way to get stuff done, isn't it? We get bridges built, we get buildings built, we get roads made, we get houses built, we get technology, we get advancements, we get all these things because of that wonderful male energy that says, we can create something great, and they go forward and create it. It's a whole different kind of energy. Sometimes, though, when you have great big ideas and you're creating great things, you kind of run over people. You forget there's another half of you that isn't getting expressed. Inside each one of us has all the male energy and all the female energy. We have access to both. But when we say only the male energy is good, and then we try to suppress the female energy, then the world is a sadder place, because we are losing out on half our intelligence. We are losing out on so much creativity, so much brilliance, so many life-saving things. All the healers in the woods, the women that healed people and made herbs and had been healing people for generations. People would go to that woman in the woods who studied the herbs and studied the plants and knew what worked for what. All got burnt up in the Dark Ages. Do you know the Holocaust against women in the Dark Ages was like 3 times more people killed, mostly women, than in World War II by Hitler. 3 times more women killed. So we're now coming into the third era, and this is what gets exciting, because the third era is where we understand both are equal and different. And that when I understand both sides of the energy, when I understand male energy, when I understand feminine energy, I can use the appropriate one at the appropriate moment. When you see someone being abused or someone snatching somebody's purse, and you have the ability to say, stop, give that back, that's good use of male energy. When you see a child crying on the street and you sit down and put your arm around him and don't say much of anything but pat him a little bit and let them tell you what's wrong, that's using female energy. And we need both, because to understand what's going on and what's dysfunctional in this world, we need to have the nurturing, listening, receptive energy, and we need to have the moving forward, creative, putting it out in the world, expressing energy. We need both. Shakti Guan wrote a book about this, and she said that the purpose of men on the planet today is to teach women how to fully develop their masculine side, to model it, and to teach women when to use it, when it works, when it doesn't. And women are here to teach men how to fully develop their feminine side. When to be nurturing, when to be kind, when to forgive, when to just receive information and not feel like you have to do anything about it. We're teaching each other how to be whole, and it's lovely to watch. God no longer is a male or female. God is an it. God is a field of unlimited potential, a field of energy and information that you and I and everyone, no matter what year you were born to be in this world, whatever you are part of this field of unlimited potential. And you can use all of your gifts to create whatever you want in your life. And we, just the people in this room today, could focus our prayer and our intention on having a peaceful world. And what we would do would make a difference. Some of you know this, but some of you don't. But when I was here before, one of the first things we did was it was when the Bosnia war was on. The war in Bosnia was on. And people were getting killed, and children were getting killed, and families were getting torn apart. And it was like Syria is now. And so we started a prayer vigil, 11 o'clock every day of the week. We had a little room that Vera Kadot gave us in the Harrington, and we set it up with a little altar and chairs, and every day at 11 o'clock we invited anybody who wanted to come up and pray for peace in Bosnia. And we sent out letters asking other churches to do it. We sent out some letters to radio stations and newspapers. And, after we'd been into it for about 6 weeks, the newspaper decided to come and do a story on us. And we lit some candles, and we led a prayer for peace in Bosnia and peace around the world. And they took pictures, of our little room at the Harrington, the whole thing, and all of the people there praying. And they said, this will come out on Saturday. I said, okay. So Saturday, I went and grabbed the paper. On the front of the paper, the headline says, "Peace declared in Bosnia." Whoa. And right under that, on the front page, was a picture of us praying. Church holds prayer vigil for peace in Bosnia. I guess it worked. So I'm telling you, if you think just these people in this room can't make a huge difference on this planet just through our prayers, then you haven't looked deep enough. You haven't looked deep enough into your own mother's heart. Because when you cry, when you see those kids that are in refugee camps, there's something you can do. You can pray for them. And we together can put so much love around those kids that their lives will always be changed because of it. God bless.